Of the top 50 incoming freshmen in the class of 2020, which college has the best recruiting class? And which weight and state have the most recruits headed in college? Let's stop stalling and start talking wrestling. What's going on, wrestling fans? My name's Josiah, and welcome to Fanco Wrestling, the Fanco 50, which are the top 50 incoming freshmen in the class of 2020. The Fanco 50 are some of my favorite videos to make each year because we talk about who are the guys to be watching in the future. In this video, we're diving deep into the statistics of these top 50 guys, where we see where we find out who has the best college recruiting class, which state is sending the most guys to college, and there's one state that is actually dominating this year. Before I get into this video, I do want to mention that in the next video in this playlist, this is a series of videos, I will be talking deep about the statistics on the top 25 guys, which I know is what you are really looking forward to. As we first talk about these statistics on these top 50 incoming freshmen, we have to talk about the most weights that are represented. So we see in this graph here the weights that are being recruited, the top 50 guys, which weights from high school are the most recruited. And we see that the most recruited weight right now is 145 pounds. This is actually very similar to last year as well as years in the past. We see kind of this bell curve in the graph here, in this bar graph here, which is very similar. You don't really see those 106 or 113 pound weight classes being recruited as much because there isn't a college weight class there. You know, starting at 125 pounds, you're going to see that 120, 126 being recruited more than the lighter weights. Not that they don't get recruited, but as far as the top 50 guys, it's just a little bit more unlikely. And as you know, you kind of see more representation in those middle weights where there are some more weight options in college. It's really a big reason why there. And you see some of the toughest guys, you know, in each of those weight classes. And then we shift our attention to the top 10 guys. What are the top 10 high school wrestlers, recruits? What are their weight classes? And you still see very similar. 145 is one of the most highly recruited, as well as this year is 220. And if you know who those two guys are at 220, that may make a little bit more sense to you as far as why those guys are there. And then we have to talk about which states are getting the most recruits sent to college. And these states are, you know, they kind of vary year by year, but for the most part, you have similar states with Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Ohio, California, sending in some of the most highly recruited states. But this year, there's one state that is absolutely crushing it, and that is Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has 14 of the top 50 incoming freshmen. Out of the Fanco 50, 14 of those are Pennsylvania guys. And no, that isn't any of my Pennsylvania bias. That is just, these are the guys who are getting recruited, which I thought was, you know, pretty interesting that they have this many guys this year. And I mean, it's just absolutely stunning to me just how many of these guys there are. You look at Missouri and Ohio and Florida sending in some of the next highest guys, and these are actually all the states that are being represented in the Fanco 50, from PA all the way down to Wisconsin. And look, as far as the class of 2019, you had New Jersey and Pennsylvania who were actually tied as the top for the most high school recruits, and Ohio was coming in at a close second. Now, the next thing I thought, which was kind of an interesting statistic to look at, one thing I didn't look at last year, but I thought would be interesting this year, is looking at each state. How did these guys place at the top 12 toughest tournaments in the country? And, you know, we have to look at, there are different guys, number of different guys in each state, as well as, you know, they're not going to the exact same tournaments. But I'm like wondering, you know, are Pennsylvania guys more likely to place first, or maybe all these 14 Pennsylvania guys are placing like sixth? So this is the graph that kind of describes that and explains where these guys are placing. You see Colorado, two of these guys in the top 50 have an average place of first place. With Pennsylvania having the most guys, their average place is actually second place in all the tournaments that these guys attended and went to, which I thought that was fairly interesting to look at. And you can kind of look at each of these other states. So those are two of the big ones I wanted to note, but California, Florida were two big ones. Missouri, which had 4 guys in the top 50. Placing second was pretty darn impressive. You see New Jersey kind of towards the bottom there, not the bottom of all states, but just of, these top 10 schools. And New Jersey has 3 guys in the top 50, and their average place has been 5th place. Just some interesting things to note. And now we have to get into really the college statistics. What conference is recruiting the most? What school is the best recruiting school this year? Which has the best recruiting class? And as we talk about the conferences, first of all, I want to mention it's not really that big of a surprise that the Big Ten has the most recruits in the class of 2020. It's likely going to happen every single year just because it's the nature of the Big Ten. What I do like to see here, though, is representation in the SoCon for the first time in a couple years, as well as in the Pac-12. Those are 2 conferences that I like to see some representation in, just because they're small conferences. They're smaller conferences than the Big Ten. With the SoCon bringing in, with going to Campbell, is Justin Rivera, a top 50 recruit, as well as Jesse Vasquez, who is going to Arizona State. That is in the Pac-12. A couple of these other schools to note here. You talk about in the ACC, which it has some great representation there, with guys from UNC and Virginia Tech who are going, guys going to Virginia Tech and UNC. In the Big 12, Okie State is leading the way, really. In the Big 10, Iowa and Penn State, of course, are always going at it, as well as Nebraska squeaking some guys in. So, the question on your mind now is, which school has the best recruiting class? Which school has the best recruiting class? And that is Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State absolutely crushed it this year. Now we're looking at how many guys are they bringing in out of the Fanco 50, out of these 50 top recruits, how many they bring in, and what is their average rank? Maybe they're bringing in 4 guys, but their average rank, once you kind of average that out, is like 45. They're bringing in some of the bottom 50. But no, Oklahoma State, their average rank is 13.5. So they have some guys, in the top 10, maybe some guys a little bit lower than that, but just something to note there, just to be aware of how I'm doing these. Missouri is another interesting school to note here, which I was very impressed by the guys Missouri's bringing in. Penn State and Iowa, you can see them obviously competing against each other every year. Penn State with a top 3 class this year. Iowa still breaking that top 10, which, you could see guys that move out and do better than their rank. You see it happen every single year. Just because you have this ranking doesn't mean that's where you're going to finish in college. That's just absolutely absurd. But some things I do like to see here, though, are in the ACC with UNC, in Virginia Tech, as well as NC State. NC State really helping to push their future and do very, very well. Cornell, I love to see those guys coming in here. One of those guys being Yanni's younger brother, which is impressive. And Nebraska even cracking into that top 10. These are some of the best high school wrestlers coming in to compete in some of the best colleges in the country. Now, if you are interested in learning about these top 25 recruits, as we dive deep into the Fanco 50, you're going to want to check out the next video in this series up top here. For the full Fanco 50 playlist for the 2020 incoming freshmen, you can check out this video down below. So stop stalling and get on watching.